Good day, ladies and gentlemen, and everything in between. My name is Dustin Cormier, and you're watching another episode of How to Rock Astrology. Today, we are going to be checking out my very own Venus sign. That is Venus debilitated in the sign of Virgo. Now, rest assured and do not fear if you have this placement, because as I've been saying in all these videos, these are planets in their signs, and you have to understand that there's a reason why all astrologers on YouTube, they say don't just look for a cookbook analysis of the planet in its sign, because the planet by itself in its sign is kind of like thinking about an onion. An onion by itself is not what it's going to be once you put it into a soup or once you cook it with something else. When you cook it with something else, it becomes something completely different. Fried onion with salmon or fried onion in a stew is a completely different thing from just eating an onion by itself. That being said, it's still useful to just underline what this onion is for each planet in its sign. There's so much more to Venus than just its sign, and there's so much more to this Venus than it just being debilitated in Virgo. You have to consider the aspects from benefic planets or from its friends. Ideally, that's Mercury and Saturn. There's also Shadbolic to consider. There is the closeness to the fourth house cusp, which is called Digbala in Vedic astrology, and many other things. There's just lots of ways to, even the rising sign some rising signs will do well with Venus no matter what. Generally tends to be the earth and air signs usually have Venus as being the lord, the dispositor of auspicious houses. And even with all this, there's many things that can convey a strong Venus. Now, we do have to consider the fact that Venus is debilitated here. And what this means is that Venus is in a sign which has difficulty expressing a dignity that caters well to the nature of what Venus is supposed to be and do. There is one saving grace with this position, and it's that Venus is in the sign of its friend, Mercury. And in Vedic astrology, that's an important thing. Venus is one planet that is thankfully well served in this way. When it's debilitated in the sign of a friend. And so Mercury's communication, by being in the sign of Mercury, this is going to help this Venus figure out its difficulties that it is experiencing through the communication style that Virgo and Mercury, its ruler, tends to abide by and convey. Essentially, this is someone who accepts that they have a rather dry, simple nature when it comes to love, when it comes to luxury, when it comes to needs. Because Venus is really the sustainment. It's the water that sustains us on the road of doing what our sun and our masculine planets, the sun, Mars, and Jupiter, wants to do. Venus and the moon in particular tend to hold this water Svadhisthana chakra, the Svadhisthana chakra, which is the second chakra, the water chakra. And this is according to a certain Vedic idea of the chakras. This is given by Ernst Wilhelm in his Graha Sutras. The water tattva is ruled by Venus and the moon. So even though you have Venus here, you could have a moon that knows how to apply it, what it wants to be, what it needs, and who it wants to be with. And if that's important enough, then the moon can compensate for Venus here, at least by Venus in its sign. If Venus also has difficulties in other ways, and this is just a very difficult Venus, the moon compensates for the water Svadhisthana chakra. And the moon can help uplift the social regard that Venus and the moon both rule. So Venus in Virgo, Venus is kind of like how we get water through a mutual benefit and value that we give to others. And ideally, when Venus is exalted or when it's at its best placement, it gives value by something that it's intrinsic to itself. It recognizes that there's something about me that is worth loving and that is valuable. And love is the Water Svadhisthana chakra. It's a part of everybody's metaphysical energy field, and it's energy. So when we love ourselves, we put something out there, which those who jive with our Venus or with our moon, it's valuable to them. It might not be gold or it might not be a physical functional item, but it is something that's of sentimental value. And this is a functional need in humans. So there will be those who love us for what we put out there as our Venus. As well, we also track those who will appreciate our Venus and how we put it out there. So Venus in Virgo tends to attract those who appreciate how kind of independent the Venus in Virgo is, how little they need to feel comfortable and luxurious. Venus in Virgo, this is my own placement, and Venus in Virgo can find an ocean in a dewdrop. It's the kind of artist drinking a bottle of wine in a back alley and feeling all the mysticism of reality needed through a simple experience like this. And they're in tattered, raggy clothes, and they don't necessarily need much more than that. They're happy there. That's an extreme example. That would be somebody whose Venus is really bad and doesn't have a good moon either, especially if they are lonely in that place. But ideally, Venus in Virgo wants to be appreciated for not being too extravagantly dependent for any reason on any of the bells and whistles of love. A Venus in Virgo person will be appreciated for being reliable, being kind of simple, and they want to feel like their partner enjoys this about them. The thing is that this is not catering to the nature of Venus. We all know Venus is the beautiful Aphrodite-ish, all the sensuality and eroticism of Earth is typically what we expect out of Venus. And so this is a Venus that is, you have Venus there. You are not lacking the planet Venus in your chart. It's just in a sign that is not conducive to what Venus is, but your Venus is still there. You still have Venus. You can still be loved, and you can still express love, and you can still be appreciated for the type of love that you do express. Now, as we read, we're going to find out through the reading that we do today that the love that is generally expressed through Venus in Virgo is a hardworking, serviceful person. And I've written something just to kind of get at the idea of what this is all about. I always say that Venus at its best is supposed to work smarter, not harder. By just simply being what you are, you can mesh in harmony with somebody, and from there, Venus does enjoy serving. Venus is exalted in Pisces, which is opposite Virgo, and they have an axial relationship, where Venus in Pisces at its best actually loves to playfully serve. Virgo tends to servicefully play. I'm going to try to talk more about this axis. So what's going on here is that Venus in Virgo idealizes working hard and intrinsically feels like it needs to work hard in order to be loved. Venus in Pisces is the flip. It accepts love, and it's joyous about serving the love that it experiences first. Venus in Virgo doesn't feel like there's a lovingness inside of itself by sign. It doesn't feel like it is comfortable having love and good things and luxury coming to it without it working hard on something simple. It feels like it's extravagant. And there's wisdom with Venus being in Virgo, because the planets give to the sign as much as the sign gives to the planets. Sorry for bumping my elbow there. Venus is giving something to the sign of Virgo in your chart. And the Virgo in your chart has to do with service and work and meticulous material things, which Venus is granting a consciousness there, especially if it's well placed. So Venus in Virgo has to work or to fit an ideal. There's an idealism that comes with Venus in Virgo that is unhealthy. But it wants to work or to fit a certain ideal or to fit someone else's ideal in order to feel comfortable, juicy, and accepted. So essentially, Venus in Virgo will search its whole life until it finds someone who it thinks would appreciate the simple, what's the word I'm thinking? Like dainty kind of vibes of the Venus in Virgo. They'll search until they find someone who you think would appreciate you, and then you tend to fall in love with someone who appreciates all your flaws and for what you are. And then you will appreciate them for all their flaws because you know that you have flaws that you've sought someone to appreciate. And it's this ideal, as we're going to read, this ideal is what blocks Venus in Virgo from experiencing the actual love that they are transmitting from their heart to all the people around them. There's an idea that they just kind of have to, at some level, would be healthy for them to get out of their head and just experience all the love that is around them for what it is. And this idealization of needing to work hard to fit someone else's ideal, it comes from the fact that they don't feel worthy of goodness and love or trusting themselves. They want to, and essentially what I've written here is that Venus in Virgo wants to purify itself in order to be worthy of love. And it feels instinctively like it wants to work hard and to be of useful, be functional, be of service so that they can grasp a security that comes from an effort that they apply, not from what they intrinsically are, which is what would be easier. It would be easier if you didn't have to work. It would be easier if you were just loved for what you are without trying. But this is a Venus that feels the need, or rather it just wants the security of being able to do things for the partner that the partner will appreciate. Usually this means, as the common meme or trope of Venus and Virgo, is that they'll find people who they see have needs or flaws, which the Venus in Virgo is okay. Venus in Virgo wants to be appreciated for being okay with somebody else's flaws, but they have to be the right flaws. They have to fit the ideal of the Venus in Virgo's flaws that make the Venus in Virgo still feel dignified. Like, I'm doing this difficult thing for you, and you appreciate it, and I am redeemed for doing something that no one else would do, whatever that is. And ultimately what it is that you've got this old tractor, and you could get a new tractor, but you want the one that takes diesel fuel because diesel fuel is easier to get, and it's going to go brum, 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 and it's a hard ride, but you want to be appreciated for your ability to drive that hard ride. And your tractor thanks you for being the only person who's willing to put up with this very fidgety thing. And that it's a reflection. Venus and Virgo can be fidgety itself. Venus and Pisces, the opposite axis. Venus and Pisces wants to love in order to purify itself for the other person together. By growing together. It feels self-love. Venus in Pisces understands and looks within itself for what the love that it has experienced, the love that it has, and it wants to meet that love with others. Because there's an intrinsic feeling of value there, and it wants to enjoy what Venus is for Venus's sake. Now, of course, Venus in Virgo can have blessings, just like Venus in Pisces can be a curse. If you've got Venus in Pisces, is that there's a revved up feeling of an anticipation of an ideal kind of love. And if they don't meet it, then it can be disappointing because there is much Venus coming through the Venus in Pisces door. With Venus in Virgo, there's tends to be less disappointment in a way because you don't expect too much out of Venus. Now, this is different for different people. Different, if you've got an air or an earth rising sign, that usually means that Venus will be ruling either the first, the fifth, or the ninth house, and this Venus is important to you, typically. And by being in Virgo, it shows some difficulty in expressing that important house, whatever that house may be. Like for Gemini, Libra rules the fifth house, and Taurus rules the 12th house, which has some difficulty there in its own right. But that means Venus rules your fifth house. And it's important for Venus to be conveyed properly. By being debilitated, it means that fifth house is losing its tack by not feeling like it's that important to you, or like you'll be okay being disappointed, which means you're not going to push at your best to convey that fifth house or whatever house Venus rules in your chart, right? So that's the same for everybody. Whatever Venus rules in your chart here, you're going to be okay if it doesn't go well, but that also means that you're not going to try your best to work smarter, not harder, at getting what that Venus is. Venus in Virgo works hard to be valuable, and it can't feel valuable without working hard. And this is where the problem can be with Venus in Virgo. Now, as I often say, if we can meditate, if we can understand all of our planets, then you can observe objectively the nature of your reactive compulsion in regards to what Venus has been in your whole life, and you can see that there is a part of you that needs to accept a love that is simple, that is at some level unconditional, and that at some level you will feel good working hard to secure your relationship by offering communication to your partner, typically, because this is in a Mercury-ruled sign. So you will work hard to communicate with your partner. When are we going to get together and have a cool, nice experience? And whenever you do get together, it'll probably be a sensual one involving things that you can be busy with so that there's not as much intensity of you sitting with your partner and you feeling like there's not much to talk about, because Venus in Virgo doesn't think too much about expanding on the sentimental life between you and your partner. And this probably feels embarrassing and you might be insecure about it. This is where Mercury saves the Venus in Virgo, because Venus is in the sign of its friend here. In Vedic astrology, we take very seriously the friendships and enemies between planets. When a planet is in the sign of a friend, it means that the nature of that friend is going to help secure the nature of the planet, in this case Venus, because Mercury and Venus have a similar nature, if you understand it. Venus rules Libra and Taurus, earth and air. Mercury rules Gemini and Virgo, earth and air, right? Air and earth. So there's a shared nature here where Venus feels good and natural and can communicate that this is my nature. Mercury will communicate this to you in your life. And it's, hopefully you have a well-placed Mercury so that, the best ideal here would be like if, you don't want the sun to be too close to Venus, but if you have the sun in Leo and then Venus and Mercury together in Virgo, Mercury will be exalted. This will be a huge boost to this Venus, to the point where you've always got to deal with the fact that you might feel insecure, that your partner feels that you're a bit dry and boring. But if you communicate and you constantly refurbish with your partner that I want to be appreciated for not needing much and for being of service and working hard at the difficult moments in life. You will do that, and your partner will communicate that that's good enough for me, and you'll always be left wondering, but nature and energy work out at the energy level, and our internal brains can go a million ways thinking that it's something different. Mercury should help you to secure and confirm with your partner that you are doing all that you need to do, and that I love you, and that we have things going on beyond what most people have in relationship, and that's good enough for the both of us. Essentially, Venus isn't that loud. Of all the planets trying to get our pure awareness's attention, Venus is quiet. Just like, you've probably experienced in your life where you're quiet, you don't need to raise your hand and say, hey, I want to be this something special. Pick me, pick me. Venus does not jump out and say, pick me in our own attention when we have Venus in Virgo. So all the other planets have probably got more things going on. So there's so many ways why we would get connected with a partner. Think about your 7th house. You could have Jupiter in the 7th house, and you could get something. You'll get a partner if you've got Jupiter in the 7th house, and it'll be for reasons outside of Venus. It'll be that that you've got some karma going on that you give to your partner that they deeply appreciate. It just happens to be the case when you two sit down and you're eating together, there's a quietness and there's not so much of a need to unfurl the love between the two of you. In this, it's almost superficial, like Venus can be, because the real arbiter of love is Jupiter. Jupiter rules the 9th house. Jupiter is the house of marriage. The 9th house is the true house of marriage. The 7th house, which is more ruled by Venus, is really about enjoyment. And here, you're going to I recommend to think about what you can offer to your lovers. Even go to therapy and talk about how, work out with somebody what you offer in relationship outside of what is almost frilly, superficial Venus things that most people get to enjoy. Like whatever that might be, being the life of the party, thinking deeply about the other person's likes and then doing them. Like this is something that you don't think about probably because you don't necessarily do it for yourself. But if your partner wants you to do that and think about ways that you can give them gifts or think about ways that you can show them that you love them, the Venus and Virgo in you is not naturally inclined to do that, but you'll work hard and communicate. You'll ask your partner, what would you like from me? And they'll say, especially for a man like me having Venus and Virgo, I don't think that much about like my partner's birthday coming up, or like little or holidays or little things that we could do together that would be specific for her or him. I'm bisexual, but I've got a girlfriend at the moment. I don't think too much about how I could show them a good time, what I could do, what's the last thing that I did for them, what was the last thing I bought them. These are all Venus things. And if my partner communicates to me that I would like you to do that, which they do, they have to because I don't think about it naturally. So they communicate it to me through Mercury, and the Mercury in me, I speak about it. I talk with my mother about it. I talk with my people about it and just say that this is what my girlfriend likes. And so I talk with everybody about it. And it's an effort. It's like a tractor that it feels to me like I have to put in a lot of effort in order to keep it and feel secure and feel juicy and comfortable with each other. But it's still my tractor. It's still my love. And I don't feel my Venus is placed well enough that I don't feel that bad about this hard effort that I do have to put in. And I communicate it, and I feel secure knowing that I do what they communicate, and they communicate to me that we're both happy and where we need to be. Ultimately, the astral spheres are what they are, but we are a pure witness observing the nature of the past actions that have come before us. You and me, being Venus and Virgo, have had a past action of not thinking that deeply of how to enjoy the superficial, frilly things that Venus implies. I call them superficial, maybe because I'm a Venus in Virgo. At some level they are, but it's just like undressing a person. All those clothes, the undressing is so much a part of the foreplay of getting together and doing the thing and having sex. Is where I'm going with that. Merging. You know, the superficial layers of personality are, it's like the layers of an onion. But Alan Watts has that classic thing. Those, when you get to the heart of an onion, what do you see there? It's nothing. Those layers of the onion are the onion. And in the same way, the love we have between another person, it's just layers of an onion, but it is the onion. So this is something to think about with your Venus placement, is that you might feel like it's superficial, and it is, but you're going to miss out on that onion or that parfait, the cake, whatever it is that you wanted to have the expression of love and enjoyment to be. It may feel frilly to you, to us, but it is still love. And if you go through it, you'll look back saying, at least I didn't miss out on love. So we have to work hard for it, but that working hard is still Venus. It's still the thing that we enjoy doing, being, and loving. Now, this has been my personal spiel on this. This is going to be a longer video because Venus in Virgo is where it's debilitated, and I wanted to give my idea, my spiel on this subject, especially because it's my own placement. Now, to air it out a little bit, we're going to go through some texts to kind of give other authors' perspective on kind of what I just said, but in a slightly different way. This one is a good one. This is one of the first books I've read on astrology. It's Astrology, A Cosmic Science by Isabel M. Hickey. This is Isabel talking about Venus and Virgo, where Venus is said to be in its fall. Venus is naturally very unhappy in the sign of Virgo. The person who has Venus in the sign of its fall has to learn to be loving. It is the signature of one who has been unloving and superficial in past lifetimes. One who has not learned that when criticism comes in the door, love departs. It's a tricky thing because Venus wants to be appreciated for its nitpicking in Virgo. It wants to be appreciated for its criticism, but you can't let that be the center of your relationship, because you've got to remember that people come to you for Venus first and the sign quality of Venus second. So a partner they'll appreciate that the Venus and Virgo in us will call a spade and talk about when things don't work in the relationship. But you don't want to put a parameter around yourself so strongly by saying, oh, this is going to be difficult because you don't like Indian food and I love Indian food. You see, darling, that's a really big, difficult thing for the two of us. You see that? That's tough for us to go through. And the partner's like, yeah, okay, so what do you want to eat? You can't be too much on this criticism and talking about the difficulties in the relationship. Find the balance so you can be appreciated when you do mention it, just enough without killing the thing itself, the relationship itself. Because when criticism comes in the door, love departs. And that is very true. This is why Venus is exalted in Pisces, where we love the person unconditionally. Venus in Virgo, by its definition, has conditions needed in order to love. Although if you have a well-placed Venus, you will find unconditional love. It will just happen to be the case that you will still nitpick the conditions, but will come from the true heart of what Venus is, which when it's at its best, if it's got aspects from friends, whatever, it's going to express like Venus in Pisces. And even someone with Venus in Virgo can use Venus at its best by having a Piscean, all-accepting nature. even though your instinct will still be the Venus and Virgo vibe. This person makes an excellent housewife, but needs warmth and lovingness to make a home. Cold and critical, and needs many good aspects to warm her up, as we've already said. There's fastidiousness and purity here in this placement, but they do not relate to others easily. They feel very individual. They feel like they don't jive with anybody. Here's an interesting line, and it's just, I'm going to put it out here and I'm going to give us time to digest it. Conventions stand guard over the emotions, but don't let the tail wag the dog. Venus and Virgo will learn through books and through observing others how people ought, it seems like this is how they ought to love. You know, there's a movie me and my girlfriend recently watched called Clueless, and there's this girl, Cher, the main character, who perfectly conveys Venus and Virgo. She thinks that she sees and observes when things don't work, and she sees things in relationships they don't work, and she considers herself a matchmaker. And she says, you know, I see these don't work because these two have fights about this. If only she was going out with this guy, then it would be perfect. The matches she always brings together never work. And then there's, you know, she's got a friend with another boyfriend, and they have little kerfuffles, and the guy seems immature for her. They don't seem to make it work. But ironically, it's the people who are working out their shit together that end up loving each other the most at the end of the story, at the end of the movie. So conventions, ideas of how things ought to work, stand guard over the emotions. You know, it's like there's this idea that you look for what would be a perfect picture story relationship with this person. And this stands guard over the emotions of feeling what's actually happening between you and another person. But don't let the tail wag the dog. You will find what conventions are true after you impart to yourself a little bit of Venus and Pisces wisdom, which is to feel your emotions. Don't guard yourself away from them. Don't hide yourself from what you truly feel in your heart, and experience love as it is all around you unreservedly. Let your Venus free. After you move into the heartfelt space of your own true emotions, however you got to do that, you can let your ideas of conventions move you through the relationships that you have received. But if you don't open your emotions, then you'll never have the true scientific data to explore through your idea of conventional love. You won't be able to explore how those conventions work because you'll have no love connections to explore them through. Conventions stand guard over the emotions, but don't let the tail wag the dog. I love that line. This person is inclined to put off marriage because they see so many imperfections. They are harmonious in their work if Venus is unafflicted. This is because, again, Venus gives to Virgo as much as Virgo gives to Venus. There's a benefit through employees, and there's a strong desire to serve. Very Venus and Virgo. Now, I've been talking about this sign for quite a bit already. I'm feeling the desire to call her a day on this sign for now with one more reading. We've been talking about some more esoteric vibes of Venus and Virgo. Now we're going to describe Venus and Virgo through Erotic Astrology by Phyllis Vega. This is a little bit more of a laid-back nature of the love-making personality of the Venus sign. So this is Venus and Virgo through Erotic Astrology. Venus in Virgo tends to be sensitive and insecure in love and romance. And this quality of reserved dignity is part of our appeal. I like the way they put that because I feel that. There's a quality of reserved dignity. I feel that so much, although ultimately, especially if a man like me can get in my head about that. Critical of those who you care about. You're always trying to help others better themselves. You're a great listener, and you keenly observe potential suitors in hopes of learning what makes them tick. It's almost like we observe so much the behavior of a person and try to move through that and almost even fixate on it in a way that's not really good. But there is positivity that can come from this. It's when you talk to a person and they are saying, look, just meet me at my heart. And you're saying, I am. I've noticed that you do this and you do this and you do this and you've changed. And sometimes I don't know where you're at. When people change, it can be hard for us to hold the love that we've secured from before. But again, if your Venus is well placed, it will continue to let go of what it thought the person was, still meet the person at the heart, and they will have new behaviors that we ultimately still analyze in order to try to be a good reflection for the person, to be a good listener, and to help them with what we think they need. It's still always good to listen. And you are a great listener, especially because Venus is delighted by Mercury here. You may not show a lot of emotion outwardly, but you're extremely sensitive to what others think of you. More than anything, you need to feel needed and appreciated, and would rather be alone than with someone who fails to measure up to your high standards. These standards will usually revolve around somebody who shows appreciation in a constant way. There's a narcissism there seated in this statement, which, again, I would convey as we're talking about Venus and its sign here, and that's a very strong onion flavor. But once you're in relationship, some of that flavor does disappear, especially if you've got a well-placed Venus. It's a really bad Venus who has such high standards that they don't accept the person unconditionally again, right? Which is, you'll go through your whole life without love if you have too much of that standard motivation. Although you're capable of complete involvement, you do prefer privacy, and you shy away from demonstrative displays of affection at the extreme degree, depending on things. I've got the moon in Sagittarius, and I could love to show displays of affection, but I don't like the Venus in Virgo in me likes for it not to be necessary. I'll do it and I'll give a little squeeze and a hug and, oh, thank you, baby. And I like to express and communicate my love, but it's not going to be the grandeur that other Venus placements tend towards. The perfectionist in you longs for a lover that you can place on a pedestal and worship almost from afar, especially when you're young. This is something that you probably experience. You'd almost rather not break the dispel of the illusion of the idea that you have by actually meeting the person and finding out that they're not the ideal that you fantasized about them. But your earthy, practical side wants a loving relationship that functions orderly and efficiently. Eventually, we break through this fantasy thing in order to really experience it. In the bedroom, you're endearingly modest, but you're responsive to touch, and over time, you reveal the deeper layers of your innate sensuality. And this can be someone, at least in my experience, who can be kinky and who can have lots of different types of sexual experiences. I've got Mars in Scorpio, and it can be rock and roll when it comes to sex, but I definitely, no matter where your Mars is, there is a modesty here. You want to be appreciated for. It's almost there's a kinky thing that can come between, depending on your Venus and Mars placement, where getting into a sensuality and an eroticism, and even the mental high intensity that sexuality can bring is something that almost feels deliciously dirty for Venus and Virgo. But it's almost like they're purifying themselves by letting go of their pretenses, letting go of the conventions, letting go of the ideas of fixation in the Virgo's mind and the Venus and Virgo's mind, and just being completely wrapped in the pure sensual energy. A lot of the Venus and Virgo plus moon sign combinations talks about how, this is a person who can be tickled, who can be felt and fondled, and even just put slight little constant erotic intentions that this person will, well, excuse me, like if a partner is constantly teasing you throughout the day, all of that foreplay is going to add up to a tension that gets released in the sexual experience. And all of that foreplay is a huge part of what the Venus and Virgo loves. Because when it finally comes down to it, Venus and Virgo doesn't typically put too much hot sauce on the burrito. They're not all that about sentimental bonding and experiencing long, intense lovemaking and deep, single-pointed lovemaking. It's really more about all the other fixins. It's all about the foreplay and the I love yous and the communication of just teasing and even breaking character. This is something that Venus and Virgo can do. It's this sensuality that's physically felt, and it builds into this sort of trance-like groove. But the Venus and Virgo will kind of be still themselves within this, like, oh my gosh, I'm being taken over by this sexual vibration. But you'll like say jokes and little things to break the sexual tension, which is not conducive to Venus at its best. But if you've got an earthy partner, they'll laugh with you, and then like you'll be like, and you'll kind of allow that tension to break and then fall right back into it. That's at least in my experience. But I think that I've got Sagittarius moon, and that might be a part of where I'm coming from with that. So let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree with where I kind of came through with all this, folks. Ultimately, this, like I said, is just the sign placement, and there's so much more to everybody's Venus than just the sign placement. But I hope this gave a little bit of the taste of the ingredient that you are in the soup that your chart is. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. Let me know in the comments if you dug this. If you enjoyed me describing it through my own sign. Always keep in mind that when an astrologer is talking about their own sign placement, there's a bias, because it's hard to see your own energy in context. That's a caveat I have to give here. But at the same hand, I do know my own energy well, but it can be blended in by other things, and this is what I always like to talk about, right? So let me know how I did. Let me know if you enjoyed this, and keep your eyes peeled because I always got more stuff coming through. I'm Dustin Cormier for How to Rock Astrology. Thanks so much for hanging out with me, folks. I'll see you on the next one.